We are now broadcasting to all attendees.
Great, thank you. Good evening. This is the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment. This is our regularly scheduled meeting for June 18th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. You'll notice that we're on Zoom. We're not in City Hall. And this meeting will be conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Senator Byron M. Baer Open Public Meeting Act of 2020, which allows us to conduct this meeting in this format. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Staff, are there any sunshine announcements?
Let's share my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay, in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this hearing was given to the Jersey Journal, the Jersey City Reporter, and posted with the clerk. As the chairman indicated, this meeting will be conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Senator Byron M. Baer Open Public Meetings Act of 2020, which explicitly permits a public body to conduct a meeting electronically during a state of emergency. I have the notices here.
B1.
Thank you. Can you take roll call, please?
Okay. Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Netchert?
Here.
Commissioner Velardo?
Here.
Commissioner Hofmann?
Here.
Commissioner McCormick?
Here.
Commissioner Shadid?
Here.
And Chairman Jacobs.
Here.
So we have 7 present.
Thank you. Can you swear in staff, please?
Okay, would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And that's Lindsay and Tanya.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any correspondence?
So there are a number of cases that are not being heard tonight. I'm gonna share my screen and pull up the agenda. I think it'll be a little easier to see. So the first case listed on the agenda, Z19-108, 226 Bay Street, that was already listed to be carried to the July 16th regular meeting. Case Z19-083, 87 to 89 Jordan Avenue is also being carried to July 16th. And lastly, case Z19-069, 91 to 93 Patterson Street is also being carried to July 16th regular meeting, and all notices are preserved.
So Lindsay, if I'm looking at this, what that you have on the screen,
Yes.
would it be correct to say that the only case that's going forward today is case Z18-129, address 377-383 4th Street?
Correct. So if anyone's tuning in, the only case being heard tonight is 377 to 383 4th Street. All matters other than that will be heard July 16th.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, Lindsay, I think that covers old business as well, right?
Yes.
There's nothing else. So with that, we're going to proceed with case Z18-129, address 377-383 4th Street. Lindsay, can you start to bring on either Chuck or Heather and their experts?
Yes, it's my understanding that Charles Harrington is the attorney for this application. I just promoted him to panelist, just working on unmuting him. And then I see Jeffrey Lewis's hand raised, so I'm gonna switch him over as well. And Chuck, is there anyone else? Is it Chuck? I got it.
Charles Height would be our planner.
Got it.
Okay, Mr. Harrington, this is your application. Looks like I see both experts.
Mhm.
You know, whenever you're ready.
Okay,
Mr. Harrington, before you start, let's mark your notices. Bridget has them. We have your affidavit, your proof of service, your notice of publication. Bridget will mark that as A1.
Okay, A1 in evidence.
And as per the fact that we're doing this by Zoom, you agree to have your witnesses sworn in remotely. That's correct?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So for the record, Charles Harrington of Connell Foley on behalf of the applicant. The application before you tonight is for a 4-story building with 20 residential units and 0 parking. We are requesting a density variance for the 20 units. The zoning, which is R5 in this instance, permits 17. So we are requesting the 3 additional ones, and during our presentation, we'll provide our proofs, which we believe that this project can accommodate the additional units. You'll see that the building proposed complies with all the setbacks, all the bulk requirements, all the coverage requirements, and then the height as well. So we're not proposing anything more than what's permitted. We actually have a little bit of a bigger setback on the school side of this building. And I note that because that's part of the reasoning that we're requesting a parking variance here, where because the building is directly next to the school building, this multifamily building would require parking. But out of some concerns we received from some people in the community and planning staff, they prefer not to have parking here, not to have a curb cut, which in this instance, there's, if you did, you could actually do 4 individual townhouses here where you could have no parking, which no parking is required. It's a little kind of a nuance here, but really our thought, one of the thoughts is here is not to have parking right next to the school because it's heavily trafficked by the kids. But it is the R5 zone. A little brief history here. This was before the board back in 2014. I think the only commissioner at that time on that hearing was Chairman Jacobs. At that time, it was in the R1 zone, and they had asked for a use variance that had been denied. Since that time, the zoning got changed to an R5, and predominantly because of the soft soil issues that we have over here that I'm sure the board is well familiar with. So, here we are. It consists of 20 units, 7 2-bedrooms. You'll see that the bedrooms are very large. The 2 bedrooms are very large. They're 13, I think 6 of them are 1,300 square foot or more. And we have 13 1-bedroom units. So with that, I am going to cut off my presentation and hand it over to Mr. Lewis, and he can bring you through the proposed project. I can't tell you, actually, we did meet with the community. I think they, and I'll let them speak for themselves. There's some things we agree on. I think there's probably still some things that we don't. But with that said, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Lewis.
So sorry, Mr. Before we just go, Lindsay, I see that there's some comments in the chat. Can you please respond to them to give people from the community some guidance?
Yeah, so 87 to 89 Jordan Avenue is being carried and will be heard July 16th. That was the question. The only case that's going on tonight is what's being presented right now, 377 to 383 4th Street. Everything else is being carried to July 16th.
Okay. And Mr. Harrington, and I know you said that you could build 4 townhouses on this spot as of right. How many units could be in those 4 townhouses?
It would be, if you went with the townhouses, since townhouses are defined as 1 to 4 units, I believe you'd end up with 16 units in that instance. But you'd have 16 units that did not require any parking, not actually did not require it, it would be prohibited. So you'd have 16 units with no parking.
So you could have, without coming here, had 16 units in 4 townhouses, and we're talking about 20 units. So that's right?
Correct.
Okay.
But on a multifamily, we could have the 17 units, the math works out that way, and then you'd be required to have 10 parking spaces as part of this development. But again, our thought in review of this, and there's been a lot of review of it, we didn't think parking was appropriate here for a number of reasons, which we'll go through in the presentation.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, my apologies. Floor is yours.
Okay, sure. And if I could actually just answer.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state and spell your full name for the record.
Jeffrey Lewis, Jeffrey-Lewis.
Thank you.
Mr.
And
Lewis,
Commissioner, for the record,
yes.
I was just going to say, for the record, my license in New Jersey is active and in good standing.
And he's been qualified before.
Yes, we accept your qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, is there a way that you can allow me to share my screen? It's not letting me share my screen right now.
Try it now.
There we go. Thank you very much. Oops, hold on. Give me 1 second. Ugh. Okay, here we are. Commissioner Jacobs, if I could just answer the question that I think you were getting at regarding townhouses versus this. 4 townhouse buildings would be really inefficient on this lot. They would each need 2 stairs, so we would have 8 staircases in those buildings, and we would have no elevators, so none of the buildings would be handicap accessible. So it wouldn't be the best use for this property, in my opinion. But just going on to our presentation here, I wanted to start at the bottom right corner of sheet T100 and just get us oriented to where we are. So this north-south road is Route 78. And then you can see Montgomery Street is down at the bottom here. Here's Columbus Drive, and then Newark Ave going on an angle right past us.
Lewis, you slow down, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Repeat
ma'am.
that again. You can see Montgomery Street is down at the bottom here. Here's.
Okay. Okay. So we have Montgomery Street going across the bottom, and then a little above that, we have Columbus Drive. And then on an angle going right past our site, we have Newark Avenue. We see 4th Avenue here. It's a one-way street going west, and we are on a single block of 4th Avenue that's on the west side of Newark Ave. So looking just to the left here, you can see the tax map, and this is what we're talking about. Newark Avenue is going across the top here, and here's our little block of 4th Street. So the 4 shaded blocks here are ours. It's 100 foot wide, 100 foot deep, and then it tapers down to about 92 feet deep. Next to us here is this huge property is the 4-story school. Next to us to the other side, we have 3-story and 2-story buildings mostly. And then we have 4-story buildings and 2-story buildings across the street from us. So that's just to give us an idea of where we're talking about. So we are proposing a new 4-story 20-unit building, and I'm going to go right to the site plans and walk you through a little of what we're doing. So you can see the bulk of the building. I should note this is a window well on the left here, and we're providing that for the building to the left. There are 2 windows that we need to provide light for, so we're providing that. Our rear yard is 30 feet. Most of that area is a lawn that's available to all the tenants, and part of it is also paving. Chuck had mentioned the setback to the school. You can see it here. This is the closest point the school is to our building, and it's 10 feet. So we took that 10-foot line and then ran straight from there, and that gives us our side setback on this side. Additionally, at the front of the property, you can see we're proposing 3 new street trees, as well as proposing a new sidewalk and new curbing. And with that, I'm going to move on to the floor plans and walk through them. So here on the ground floor plan, you can see to the left, we have 1 stair into the building by that window L. And then to the right, we have our main lobby with elevator, 1, 2 stairs, and a hallway down the middle. Our first floor is elevated, it's stepped up a couple of feet. We are in a flood zone, so we're bringing up to 1 foot above base flood elevation here. You can see we have, and before I go to the apartments on the first floor, I'm going to briefly go to the basement, and it's just below this laundry room. Right below the building lobby. You can see it to the right here. The elevator and 1 stair go to the basement, and the basement has a trash room, a bicycle storage room, and utility space. Now back to the first floor. We have 3 apartments on the back that are 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartments. These have an open dining kitchen area, with the kitchen has the open countertop for seating and eating. All the bedrooms have walk-in closets. We have central air conditioning and stackable washer dryers in all of these units. And of course, they are all ADA adaptable. And I'm bunching these 3 apartments together. They're all right around 720 square feet, and they're all the same all the way up on every floor of the building. So we don't have to go over it every time. In the front, we have 2 units that are 2 bedroom. This one unit is a 2 bedroom, 2 bath unit. That's 1,193 square feet. And the other is a 1 bedroom, 1 bath unit. That's 830 square feet. And these have all the same amenities as the others, of course. Going up to the upper floors, this is the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. And as I mentioned, the rear apartments are all the same as the first floor, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 720 square feet. The 2 front apartments are very large apartments. The one to the left is a 2 bedroom, 2 bath that is 1,394 square feet. And the one to the right is 1,310 square feet. And actually, I think I got this backwards, so just reverse those numbers if you don't mind. They're very large apartments, huge living rooms, gigantic master suites with walk-in closets and bathrooms. And then going to the roof, we are proposing a new roof deck. There is a calculation for what's allowed on a roof deck here, and it's 30% of the of the roof space. That would allow us 1,842 square feet, but through our meetings, the community thought that that was a very large roof deck, and we've shrunk that down to 1,250 square feet. We also, both stairs go to this roof, the elevator goes to the roof, and we have a small elevator lobby at the roof level. We have planters that are kind of buffering this roof deck, and then we're providing 1,838, so about 30% of the roof in green roof trays. Okay, moving on, and here are just some pictures of, this is what the planters would look like. And looking at the front elevation, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this one, just to get a better look. Come on, there we go. Okay, so as I said, we're proposing a 4-story building. The main bulk of the building has a first floor that is a gray cast stone base. The bottom base is a 48-inch tall block, and then above that we have 24-inch tall blocks. And then the floors above that, floors 2, 3, and 4, you can 2, 3, and 4. You can see we have it's a red-gray brick finish, and this is going to be a smooth brick. We're doing brick soldier courses at every window header, and we're doing recessed bands every 8 courses for decoration. At the top, you can see we have a pretty substantial cornice, 48 inches tall, and it will be a metal wrapped cornice painted black. Window frames and door frames are also black. And then if you look to the right of the building, the section to the right where we have the lobby, you can see we have a little bit of a more modern take on it, just to let it stand out a little bit. And besides the different finish, we're pushing and pulling a little bit here. So at the top, these 3 floors are cantilevered out about 18 inches, not too far. And we're using a metal panel finish with the same windows as we have everywhere else. The windows are actually just closer together, so they look a little bigger. And then below that, the lobby is actually stepped in about 3 feet. So we have a really nice cover for you when you're coming into the building. And we have floor-to-ceiling windows, curtain wall windows in the lobby space. Looking at the side elevation, and I'm going to bring us back to full size here. The one thing I want to note on the right side, you can see this is the side of the building with the lobby on it and the school. And we're actually wrapping that around, and we're coming back to the stair tower, which is about 25 feet. So those finishes will wrap around the side. Other than that, we're proposing a hardy plank, great finish on the side. On the other side where we're not next to the building and in the window well. And then lastly, on the rear of the building is also going to be a hardy plank, excuse me. And that is the end of the architectural presentation. I think maybe we just move on to Charles and take everything together. Is that what you'd like to do?
Well, Jeff, while you're, testifying now, you had an opportunity to review the planner's report from the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it speaks to pilings or piles that would be used in connection with this project. And although it's a construction issue, could you give the board the benefit of your thoughts on what needs to be done here?
Sure, and unfortunately, I didn't get to read that report before I went to the meeting, when we had the meeting with the community, so I was hopeful maybe we could reduce the number of piles, but the soil here is some of the worst soil I've probably ever read about. Basically, the first 10 feet are really bad fill, then the 20 feet below that are organic fill that's not suitable for soil bearing, and it says mentioned in the report that he thinks this used to be some sort of a stream, and it's basically eons of river deposits, which are completely unsuitable. And then the 20 feet below that are mostly unsuitable for soil bearing as well. So the report thinks that we're going to have to go down probably a minimum of 45 to 50 feet for all of our piles. The problem with that is we were asked to do helical piles, and helical piles just standard helical piles just do not go 50 feet, 45 feet. They really only go about 15 to 20 feet of depth. So driven piles are really the best solution for this property, unfortunately.
I don't want to interrupt your presentation, but that's not factual.
Well, the helical piles, you could put them together and go deeper. Is that
well,
correct?
A standard helical pile goes 15 to 20 feet. You can do a grouted helical pile, which is basically they're inserting grout into the hole while they're doing the pile, and that gives you a little more stability. The problem with helical piles is they're not very big. They're actually pretty small. So as they get too deep, the lateral stability is not there, and they break that in that direction, especially in a case like this where the soil is just pretty much useless. We're not going to have that side-to-side lateral stability that we need. With a grouted helical pile, it's possible, but it's just not the best construction practice. It's trickier, and it's really it's not what most people would recommend, is what I would think.
There was a project that this attorney did for an application a block away where that was done.
They did 50-foot deep helical piles?
More than that.
Right, and if I recall correctly, that was Ben Torrey's project. That was a block away, and when he did that, he thought he was going to use standard helical piles, and it was a smaller lot. It was about maybe 20 feet wide, I forget, but not very wide. So he really couldn't use the standard piles. But when he started using them, they dropped right. They dropped through like you had an empty box, and they dropped to the 50 feet. Then he did have to use the grout enclosed helical piles because he had no choice. And the cost of the foundation was it was well into six figures. It might have been over $200,000 for like an 8-unit building. So yes, it can be done, but our thought here and Jeff's thought is it's number one, you don't look at the cost here. It is a lot more labor intensive. but it's also not the best foundation system for this. And that's in the long run. I think it's better off. I understand the community's concern is the driving of the piles, and that would be interrupting. Anyone. Like we hear piles all the time downtown, but at the end of the day, I think the regular piles would be a better foundation for this building.
And if there's one last thing I could note, I don't know if it really matters, but basically, just so the soil is so bad here that any building that you build here is going to need piles of this order. It's not just because of the size of this building. This is actually a fairly light building.
Thank you. I mean, I know this is, Mr. Harrington, this is your presentation, however you want to do it. And Mr. Lewis, the board doesn't want to put you on the spot. We're seeing you as an architect and not as a structural engineer. We've certainly seen projects that have come before us that have had an engineer present on, the stuff that they've done, showing us pictures of the things that they're boring in the ground, detailed explanation of everything they're doing and the soil quality. I'm sure that that's not the, where you want your testimony to focus on.
Right. In truth, I'm not testifying to anything that wasn't testified the last time you heard this case, because the soil engineer did testify at the last one.
Right. This board heard ad nauseum all about the soft soils in this area and the different piling systems. So that that was not something that we needed to present tonight.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I just didn't want to force you to have too many questions on this topic.
Got it. Okay, then I'll move right on to Mr. Height to address the requested variances.
You raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Yes, Charles Height, last name spelled H-E-Y, D as in David, T as in Thomas.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, board members. So I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I was before you a week ago, actually, on the 11th, if you remember. But license is still in good standing since then.
We continue to accept your qualifications.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Height.
I appreciate it, and that does mean a lot. I know we get into some pretty challenging development projects that have a lot of detail, so I do appreciate everyone's time tonight. I will be focusing just on the two variances that we are requesting with this project. I think Mr. Lewis went through a pretty good detail of the surrounding area. The property is in the R5 district, but a large majority of this block is occupied by the school, PS5, which is a 3-story school building. Those institutional buildings are a little taller. And if you saw from the elevation on the plans, we more or less had a 4-story residential building match that roof level of the 3-story school building. So I think that structure dominates this area. With respect to residential uses, we are permitted residential use in the R5 zone or district. And really the one main variance that we are seeking is with respect to density. The R5 has a density limit of 80 units per acre. For this site, that's 9,328 square feet. That would yield a permitted unit count of 17 units. I know we did discuss a different building form, a townhouse form, which as of right would yield 16 units because townhouses are limited to 4 units per townhouse. So that's a discrepancy there. And I'll get into that a little later. But with respect to what we are proposing 20 units, which calculates to a density of 93 units per acre. So that's the technical deviation that we're requesting. First and foremost, this is an oversized lot for the R5 standards. The lot size, 9,320 square feet, compares to a minimum requirement of 1,800 square feet, 1,800 square feet. So it is substantially large, and that really kind of is the basis for a lot of the design. To comply with all the other bulk requirements, which this project does, in terms of setbacks and coverages, we are permitted to have a building envelope of 6,530 square feet. We're actually less than that. That's 70%. We're actually less than that. We're at 6,000, a little over 6,000, 6,023 square feet. So we have a relatively nice sized building footprint. The reduction, as was mentioned earlier, was really to make some greater separation between the school building, which is adjacent to the west. We're providing a 10 feet separation, where prior applications were a little shorter than that. So we've widened that to provide for a little bit more light and air and building separation to the school. So in that 6,000 square feet, 6,023 square feet, we are able to locate approximately 5 units per floor. These are very comfortably sized units, as Mr. Lewis testified to. The 1-bedroom units are 723 square feet on average, and the 2-bedroom units are impressively at larger. Some of the largest 2-bedroom units I've seen at 1,329 square feet, so 1,329 square feet. So that's just to give you a little impression as to the conforming building envelope can certainly accommodate reasonable sized units. We're not squeezing in additional units. We are permitted a 4-story building. We're not asking for any additional stories to accommodate additional units. And that is one of the main reasons why when you're evaluating the density variance, you see if you can meet the test, if the site can accommodate the added units. So I think that's really the justification for the site design and how the building can accommodate 20 units. You also balance it with the density variance with consistency in the neighborhood. The board might remember that there was another application on this block. It was fronting on Brunswick Street a little over a year and a half ago. It was a funeral home that had burned down. There was another proposal there for a multifamily building that also had a modest density request. But outside of that, so I'll give you the details on that. There are 11 residential properties on this block. Obviously, I'm not including the school. There's no units there. I'm not including some of the commercial, and there's 1 industrial building and 1 vacant property. 11 of the properties, let me count this. I'm sorry, I lost that number. 5 of those 11 are existing with densities greater than 80 units per acre. So immediately to the east of this site at 375 4th Street, there's a 3-story, 6-unit building. That's at 105 units an acre when you do the math. On lot 10, fronting Brunswick Street, there's a 4-story, 8-unit building. On lot 14 on Brunswick Avenue, that fronts on Brunswick Avenue, that's an 8-unit building as well. That's 139 units per acre. On lot 15, a 5-unit building at 135 units an acre. On lot 18, an 8-unit building at 147 units per acre. On lot 19, these last 2 front onto 3rd Street, another 8-unit building at 135 units per acre. So it was recently rezoned from the R1 to the R5, but this is a very unique block where many of these existing buildings are above that minimum or maximum 80 dwelling units per acre. And I didn't even count or reference the recently approved building, which was a 27-unit building that fronted on Brunswick Avenue and 3rd Street, and that was at 93 units per acre. So what we're proposing is certainly below some of the densities on other parcels on this lot, and I think that really just justifies that it is consistent with some of the really immediate densities on this block. With respect to the second variance, this is really more of a practical solution. Obviously, you heard us speak to the potential for this property to be developed with townhomes, which would yield 16 dwelling units and not require any parking. So you have that impact of 16 dwelling units with no parking on this site in the neighborhood. So that's a given. That's an as of right condition. Because the property has a lot width of 98 feet, we are required to provide a minimum of 0.5 spaces per proposed dwelling unit. That would be a minimum requirement for this project of 10 spaces. We opted to provide no spaces, 0 parking spaces. So that's the variance relief needed. But case in point, when you're talking about the differential impact between the conforming 16-unit no parking townhome to the request that we have tonight, which is the 20-unit apartment multifamily building with 0 parking, you're really only talking about the differential impact of 4 spaces. When you weigh the benefit of providing those 4 spaces or more, the minimum 10, or if you want to go up to 1-to-1, you're permitted to be at a 1-to-1 ratio. The amount of traffic in and out with introducing a new curb cut, this property doesn't have a curb cut as far as I was able to take away from the survey. You'd be having a lot of traffic immediately adjacent to the school. And that was a local concern with the neighborhood that we wanted to address. And by not introducing vehicles exiting and entering the site, we thought that was the best solution. The more neighborhood answer or support is we're just off of Newark Avenue. You can virtually see Newark Avenue from this property. Many of you know Newark Avenue. That basically takes you up from the north end of Journal Square all the way down to downtown. And it really is becoming a vibrant and I hear very utilized walkable neighborhood these days with all the shutdowns. But it's a thoroughfare. There's a lot of pedestrian activity. There's a lot of mixed uses. There's bus routes. And at the very southern end of Newark Avenue, about 0.5 miles from this site, there's a Grove Street Path station. So that does give an ample amount of access and mobility just within this neighborhood to justify, from a planning standpoint, the parking variance that we're requesting. So I do think that this project was appropriately designed in terms of advancing municipal land use goals. It's certainly in harmony with the surrounding properties, which are mostly brick. It has a little bit of a different texture at the corner just to create some contrast with the remainder of the building. But it certainly fits within the surrounding properties. And that would advance purpose I to promote in a desirable visual environment with an infill project. And mind you, I forgot to mention, this project is vacant. This property is vacant, and prior to that, it was used for parking spaces. So I think the transition from an underutilized lot to a vacant lot to now an infill residential use is certainly good planning. And that's what leads me to the second purpose is it's an establishment of an appropriate population density, which is purpose E. And you heard all my testimony as to the consistency with the surrounding areas. With respect to the detriment to the general welfare, I'm not really going to reference the foundation. That is not my area. I'll leave that for Mr. Lewis, the board, to handle. And I know there are issues with the soils, but we're not requesting any height variance, so there's really no issues for me to discuss the foundation. With respect to the vehicles, obviously, reducing the traffic and circulation will definitely benefit any pedestrians and school children within the area. We also modified the rooftop plan to reduce the size of it. Obviously, that would potentially reduce the occupancy and also create greater buffers from the edge of the building at the roof level to where the roof deck is located, which is really in the center. So I think that's two ways that we adapted this project to address some impacts to the local neighborhood. With respect to no substantial impairment of the zone plan or zoning ordinance, again, in projects like this, where we're able to comply with all the bulk requirements, we are a permitted use. I don't see any substantial impairment. We're 3 units over what's permitted. And when you consider those additional units are not micro units, they're not undersized compared to the other units, they're consistent. I see no reason that anyone would think this is a substantial impairment of the zone plan or zoning ordinance. In fact, I do think it advances the R5 district. The purposes of the R5 district is to provide development regulations contextual to the existing predominant 2- and 4-story multifamily neighborhood, and it references the occasional retail venues. And this is a 4-story multifamily building that I think is a great infill project and is consistent with the R5 district. So I'll really end there. Be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Mr. Harrington, I mean, I assume that's the...
Yeah, we wanted to keep it pretty short on the presentation side, so that is our presentation for this project. Any questions for either Mr. Lewis or Mr. Height?
Does anyone from the board have any questions?
I have questions, but I would prefer to hear the public first. We really only have 2 issues before us, so I think they might answer my questions in their statements.
Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask right now?
No.
I'll quickly ask a question. Mr. Lewis, what led to the decision to use hardy plank exterior, as opposed to other potential options?
On the side and on the rear of the building?
Yeah, I think you showed that.
Yeah, we have hardy plank on the sides and on the rear of the building. I think that's actually a better material than most people put on the sides and the back. A lot of times you see vinyl or you'll see ethos or something like that. The hardy plank we think is a really solid material and appropriate for this building.
Okay. Lindsay, I haven't been checking. Are there people from the public? We're going to open this up to the public. So if anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to raise your hand using the raise your hand feature. And that's how Lindsay will know that you would like to speak. We're going to make sure that we enforce that people are limited to 3 minutes for their questions or comments. I think Commissioner Rothman is going to give a very concise summary that I think is really clearly says we're going to be keeping to it, and we're going to tell you. But I think as we've always seen, I think that you can pretty much summarize what you're going to say in maybe 2 sentences. I am opposed to this project because there's no parking. There's no parking, as it is in the neighborhood. Something like that really summarizes a potential position someone may have. So, Lindsay, are there people from the public here?
Yeah, so I only see 3. I see 3 hands raised. I just want to reiterate how to raise your hand. You would toggle to the bottom of your screen if you're on a desktop or a laptop and click raise hand. If you are calling in, you would dial *9, and that's how you would raise your hand. So I'm going to go down the line just in order, and then I'm going to unmute you. And at that point, you're going to state and spell your full name and give your address.
Lindsay, I see 5.
Well, now we have 5. Once I said that.
Okay.
Hands.
Okay, so let me just
So
start.
does that mean, Lindsay, that, you know, I think we need to make this clear to people that there's going to be a cutoff point. So, you know, people can't just, you know, try to get in at the last minute. So why don't we say we're going to give people 30 seconds to, if they want to speak, raise their hand so you see them. And then if by 7:21 on my computer screen, if they haven't raised their hand on the computer screen, we're going to presume that they don't want to speak.
Right. So,
Okay, let me just say, this is Commissioner Rothman, tonight's official timekeeper. And I'm moving up from the minor leagues to the major leagues for this one appearance, maybe. Depends how it goes. We do want to hear from everybody who wants to speak. We will stick to the 3-minute time limit. That's our tradition. So please try to make your key points within the 3 minutes. As Chairman Jacobs said, it's very helpful to us to keep the drama to a minimum. So if you come up and say, I like this project because, or I don't like this project because, rather than keeping that a secret to the surprise ending. If you are in the middle of a thought, at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I will call out 30 seconds left. If you're in the middle of the thought when you hear 3 minutes, I will give you another 15 seconds. But once we hit 3 minutes, I don't want to hear another thought, and I don't want to hear just one more thing. So I appreciate that, and I hope this works for everybody. Thank you.
all right, so I don't think we should have a huge issue. There's only 5 hands raised right now. So first, I'm going to unmute Eric. All right, Eric, please state and spell your full name and provide your address.
Hi, Lindsay, I presume you mean me, Eric Hofmann?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Eric Hofmann, Hofmann. I live at 390 First Street in the Village, and I am the president of the Village Neighborhood Association.
Okay, and Mr. Hoffman, do you verify that you are who you just said you are, and that your testimony will be presumed as if it was under oath? Do you agree?
I do, and it will indeed be absolutely that.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. I'm starting my stopwatch as well because I am under obligation with my board to make a full statement rather than be as succinct as you might like, but I promise I won't drone on. I'll make it within the 3 minutes. First and foremost, the Village Neighborhood Association, we currently support this proposal, but we support this proposal conditionally. There are 3 primary issues that we have been working on with this development team since 2014. This project has been around quite some time, and the 3 things are as follows. Number 1 is the additional setback from the school. This came out of years of working with this developer. This is a very important concession to us and to the community. They are not required to do any setback from their lot line. And they are currently at almost 4 feet to up to 7'2" away from the school, which results in that 10 feet that you saw Mr. Lewis point out at the closest point to the school. So that's huge for us. That's a significant amount of light and air for the school, for the garden. And it's one of the reasons we support the variances on this project. The other is this development team has reduced significantly the square footage of their roof deck, and they've provided an acoustic barrier with plantings that we discussed with them at their last meeting. This was very important to us and again to the community themselves. The third, and this is very important, the third is that this development team use drilled piles or drilled caissons. The reason I emphasize this word is the term helical was used and discussed earlier this evening. And I want to make you aware that helical, it's very specific. It's a specific type. Helical is a corkscrew. There are numerous other types of piles that are drilled. They're drilled piles or they're drilled caissons. They are significantly able to go deeper than driven piles, 150 feet easily. I can assure you, this comes from discussions with a structural engineer who's a partner in a New York firm. I've had many conversations with him, but to say that this construction team would be precluded from a foundation that could be drilled into the
30
soil
seconds
is
left.
disingenuous. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It is disingenuous. And this is a big one for us. The vibrations that could be caused by driving piles adjacent to a building the vintage of PS5 could have catastrophic effect on the building, on the building's foundations. These are earthquake type vibrations that occur with driving piles. I see I'm almost done with my time. I want to thank everyone for hearing me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hofmann.
Okay, next is Stephanie. Once you're unmuted, you please state and spell your full name and provide your address.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Quappe, Quappe, and my address is 418 First Street, Unit 2 in Jersey City.
Okay, and Miss Stephanie, do you verify that you are who you say you are, and you will consider your testimony as if it is under oath? Do you agree?
I agree.
Thank you.
So I'm opposing the current variance for parking as a resident in the village, because I believe it sets a precedent for other developments. And I live here since 2008, so I've seen some of the rezoning work that has happened, and zoning by variance is what I'm afraid will happen. I'm very worried as a resident without a garage that this will impact me and other neighbors who haven't been consulted or didn't have an opportunity yet to weigh in, that this will make our parking situation worse here. And since I heard there has been a lot of negotiation and openness by the developer to discuss this, I think we need to really consider this plan, given that we will have 20 new cars on the street or more if we don't provide parking. So I ask that you reconsider this development under the current requested variance to not have parking, because I believe even having 16 units with 4 less cars on the street is going to be a plus for all the neighbors who are not as lucky as the ones who have a garage. I'm using Crescent Court as an example. They fit really well into the neighborhood, and they all have parking, and light and air considerations were also adhered to. So there are actually positive examples that can be followed in this case.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Peter. You are unmuted. Please state and spell your full name and provide your address.
Peter, you're still on mute.
I'm sorry, did you hear my name and address be spelled?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, Peter.
all right, so it's Farrell, Farrell. First name is Peter. 384 3rd Street, Jersey City, New Jersey. I am a VNA board member, but I am also an adjacent property owner.
Mr. Farrell, please stop talking for one moment. Mr. Farrell, do you verify that you are who you just stated you are and that your testimony will be considered under oath?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So I live at 384 3rd Street, which is lot 21 on the map that you see that was presented on the plans. I am directly behind the site that's being built, and I'm also directly next to the school. This property is unique because it's next to the school. I was the one who argued on behalf of the community people back in 2014 against the project. Since then, there have been multiple reiterations of this project put forward. It has come the furthest along now to consider, in my opinion. However, we had recently fought hard to get the R5 passed and adhered to. And it's been my position as an individual community member and also the VNA that the R5 be adhered to absent exceptional circumstances. Here, they're close to exceptional circumstances based upon the changes they've made, specifically the side school setback, giving a little more light and air to the garden because it abuts up against the garden and the little bit of outdoor space that the school has. Secondly, they've agreed to reduce the roof deck. But the third part of this is I have to object to this project unless there's a condition of the project, and I am objecting to it unless the condition is that they use the type of piling described by Mr. Hofmann earlier, the drive piling. And the reason for this is that there was a project recently right across from the school at 212 Marcelli Street or 202 Marcelli Street that did not use that piling. And it interrupted the school. The school right there is a pre-K 3 through 8th grade, has a lot of students, and that drive, the type of piling they were using, the hammer piling, interrupted the school. Classes had to be canceled. Children were coming home with headaches. The principal, Mr. Rivero, had been in communication to try and get that piling done during the break. And, despite the best efforts, that could not happen. Also, the age of the buildings in this area, including the school, could be impacted by the vibration of the piling. And as far as piling being used in this area, I have direct knowledge that right across the street from this project at 333 Newark Avenue, there's a building under construction, which is right across the street, which is using, non-driving piles, using helical pilings. So it's possible it's been done, and the construction of that building has not had the negative effect on the school. So assuming that the plans as proposed that contain the side setback on the school, the reduced roof deck, and the condition of the piling be put in place, if all those conditions are met, I would support it. Without each and every one of those things, I object to the variance. As far as the parking goes, it's
20 seconds left.
It's a hard issue. The community, obviously wants parking here. If there's an exception, this would be one property I could see because the sidewalk is used by the students. But I'm not a parking expert. But that, to me, I'm putting that aside for my position right now. So I've articulated the reasons I would object unless all those conditions are met.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell.
Okay, next we have Dario. Give me 1 second. All right, please state and spell your full name and provide your address, please. And again, this is Dario. Apologies if I mispronounce your name.
It's all right. I just pronounce it the English way normally. Right, my name is Dario Gutierrez, D-A-R-I-O, first name, last name Gutierrez, G-U-T-I-E-R-R-E-Z. I live at 36 Magnolia Avenue in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Okay, and Mr. Gutierrez, do you verify that you are who you just stated you are and that your testimony will be considered under oath?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I guess you asked us to state whether we support or oppose. Generally in favor. I'm a parent of a child who walks to school almost every, usually walks to school at a PS5. And as a parent of a child again who usually walks to school, I'm very pleased that city planning is taking sidewalk safety, especially around schools, seriously. I'm glad that there's no parking being included in this project because of the danger of a curb cut, which includes blind spots, cars moving across the curb cut, and all of that, the attendant nuisances. So I see that as a huge benefit. I'm glad that they're doing that. I'm also glad that they are setting back the project from the school. Sunlight is important for our children. So I'm very much in favor of most of this plan. I do echo the concerns about the piles, just as far as noise. I don't know how, if that can really be ameliorated, or how related that really is to the variances that are being requested. But whether it's conforming or non-conforming, it would be much appreciated if some less noisy piles can be used. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, we have Evelyn. All right, you are being unmuted. Evelyn, please state and spell your full name and provide your address, please.
Evelyn Chan, Evelyn Chan, 417 2nd Street.
Okay, and Ms. Chan, do you verify that you are who you just said you are and that you will consider your testimony under oath?
Hello?
Yes. Did you
Evelyn, I think you cut out for a minute.
did you just hear what I said, Ms. Chan?
Hello?
Evelyn,
Okay.
can you hear us?
Hello?
Evelyn, we hear you saying hello every 10 seconds.
I can hear you now, Josh. Sorry about that.
No, I didn't know if you could hear us, that's all.
No, I just heard you right now. I couldn't hear you before. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, Ms. Chan, do you verify that you are who you say you are and that you will consider your testimony under oath?
Yes.
Thank you.
I object to the project as it is currently proposed due to the fact as a parent of a child at PS5 that I guess the drill piles or the screw piles aren't going to be used. My daughter came home indicating that she had a headache, that her chair shook, her table shook, that they couldn't concentrate while they were at school all day. And as a resident of the neighborhood, I oppose the no parking because of the lack of parking in the neighborhood as is. While I appreciate the side setback for the light and air for the school, the R5 mandates parking and the lower density.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that closes the public portion. And I think I will say, and I know that I did say earlier that Mr. Lewis, I think, lacks the competency to speak on the piling issue or the soil quality. But it does seem like we need to kind of have a discussion on this.
I'd like to try.
Sure. I mean, sure. I mean, if you guys think that if you think that's
Sure.
appropriate, I mean, I think that I do remember exactly what Peter was talking about. I remember the project. We had lengthy discussions on, and I remember looking at the images of these piling things. And at that point in time, when we had a lot of projects in this neighborhood, Mr. Harrington, there was a lot about how we were putting things down. I think there's a lot of merit to the concerns raised by the public, that they're concerned about the structural integrity of the school building next to it. And I think, you know, I'm happy to defer to you and Mr. Lewis as to how you want to address this. But I mean, I want to make sure that we're able to alleviate potentially the concerns of the community on this point. Otherwise, I mean, this is a very serious issue. And I think that unless the board feels comfortable with this, and I know personally, I don't feel comfortable that I have enough understanding that the piling issue, whatever raised by the public, is being handled appropriately. It may be, you know, that alone is a reason to, you know, not vote in favor of this measure, of this application.
Great. So first, back up. As a procedural matter, do we need a motion to close the public? I don't think that was done.
I mean, I said that the public portion was closed. I've never done it via motion.
Okay. No, all right. I just wanted to make sure that we're done. But so on the piling issue, I mean, my thoughts on this are, you know, the easy answer is to say yes. You know, we'll agree to do these. I don't know if it's the drilled piling or the drive piling. I honestly don't know the difference, but I think Eric talked about drilled pilings, and then Peter referred to drive piles. I know he means the same thing as Eric, but it's kind of, I think it would be a blind yes right now. You know, we really don't know what we're getting into. and what we'd be agreeing to, right? It's a, it's almost like a blank check, if you will. And so, and then I'm not sure, with all, and I know the community issues and I understand them, but I'm not sure that the board has the jurisdiction or authority to get into a construction issue. But that being said, I'm not, that's not where this, obviously this issue would end, or nor do we want to have that be the discussion here. But my client is, he is looking at, all throughout Jersey City, you have buildings that are older, especially downtown, and there aren't regulations or restrictions on those other buildings that they can't drive piles, because there's regulations in place, right? The construction and building department have all types of regulations that you have to provide in there. We're looking to have the best possible foundation. So with that said, I think I would not want to agree that a condition that says you shall use these drive piles or drilled piles. But in the alternative, that the applicant shall be required to look into the alternatives to the typical drive pile, and see if there's other alternatives to, and can continue to try to work with the community so that it's not a total disruption. I mean, driving piles, I mean, I sit in my office here, when they're building a building, I hear them all day too, and I understand I'm not the 8-year-old sitting in class, right? But I think, if the applicant could agree to review alternatives, possible alternatives to the typical drive pile, but we couldn't commit to it now because we're just going blindly.
No, I fully appreciate that. And I'm not obviously asking you to commit to something that could be, endlessly expensive. I don't know exactly what would address all of their concerns. I think structural integrity is one issue, and then you don't know if there's a way that if it's feasible at all to say, to the extent, best extent possible, we would make sure that we're not doing construction. I mean, obviously, I don't think you would be doing construction to try to interfere with times in which students are going to be in close proximity to the building, logically. So I don't know if you would say, we'll do our best to do it outside of school time, or certainly avoid like when kids are going to be coming and going. I mean, I don't know how you would operate this.
Right, and that's a discussion we can have with the building department as a, this is a special circumstance. Can we do additional work on a Saturday? Can we do it, off school hours, things like that? But kind of again, just thinking about this, if you had, an as of right application, you're going to need the piles regardless, right? And then, the applicant developer hypothetically could just say, okay, well, here's my project. I'm going to do piles. I think what we're saying here is we're doing more than that. We're not shutting the door. We would like to explore alternatives, but I don't want to strap my client into being absolutely required because we don't know what's around the corner.
No, we appreciate that. I think we want to be sensitive to issues raised by the community and understand, we're encroaching on an area outside of, our scope.
I have a question.
I didn't hear the last few words.
Mr. Harrington, when you began your presentation, I recall there was a comment that this had come up before and there was extensive discussion of an engineering or a groundswell report or something like that. So my question is, did that report of the specialists who did that, did they get involved in the feasibility of these two different types of pilings?
That was from the 2014 application when the property was in the R1 zone, and they were all, I don't recall if you're on the board at that time, but there was a number of applications that the hardship was the soft soils here, because it used to be the Mill Creek kind of river here, so all the soils are bad. So you can't do spread foundations. That's absolutely not an option here, which on a typical 4-story building, you would do a spread foundation, which is a standard foundation. You have to use piles. So That, increases the cost to a project. He said the standard, if I recall correctly with the report, he said standard helical piles only go like maybe 10 to 15 feet, but you can connect them, like, connecting, PVC pipe. The longer it gets, the more flimsy it's going to get, right? And that's why you have to do the encasement to add the deeper you get. But it's not as stable as getting a typical pile and putting it in there. That's where, Jeff was saying that, the typical pile gives you a better foundation. The encasement piling with the helical pile or other type of pile is a little, it's not as definitive or as good of a foundation.
I'd like to ask fellow Commissioner Netchard, who is in the construction business, do you have anything to, any special information you want to add to help us in this?
No, as far as the technical details of the structural, I don't. But I was going to ask Mr. Harrington that, pending approval, you do the same structural tests. You would do test piles, I'm assuming, or you would exhaust those other options specifically to this site first, right? You're not just basing it off the 2014. You're going to do, I just wanted to make that clear, you're going to do it again, and you will obviously try to use the driven pile, the drilled piles versus the driven. It's not, you're not saying no to it. Even though you're saying that the driven piles do give a better foundation, you will have the opportunity to perform some tests to see if there's another viable option, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I also wanted to reiterate that you said, so everybody knows, townhomes also would require, and you correct me if I'm wrong, they would require a foundation of similar sort, correct?
Yes, and anything built there would require piles. And that's part of the issue here. That's part of the reason the zoning was changed, because you could build a two-family house here and it still would require piles. You can't do typical spread foundations on this soil.
No, I think that makes sense, and understanding obviously that you're going to do what you're required to do there. My concern is that I think that we need to be sensitive to the community raising something that's a legitimate concern, and them not having the ability to question an expert on that exact topic.
May I add something just to as a language point here? I think we're talking, the staff report talks about helical or screw piles as opposed to a driven pile. But Mr. Hofmann said that he prefers a drilled pile as opposed to driving piles or helical piles. Does that mean there's three types of pilings? You could either drill it, drive it, or helical?
No, if I could, a helical pile is a kind of drilled pile. There's driven piles and there's drilled piles. And we have many different options for the types of drilled piles that we can use. So I think maybe what we'd like to do is look into the different types of drilled piles, see if any of them actually would work for this site and we could use them. And that would be something our structural engineer can work with the building department to agree to. And then perhaps if they can't find something that will work properly, then maybe we have to agree to drill piles when school's not in session, something like that. It seems like it would make sense to me. But the preferable option would be a drilled pile.
So a drilled pile is, let's go another way.
There's two types of piles.
A helical pile is a subset of a drilled pile.
Correct.
Vinny, could you repeat that, please? You were being stepped on. Just repeat that last sentence.
I said, in other words, a helical pile is a subset of a drilled pile. So if a condition of this is that there be a drilled pile, it doesn't mean it has to be helical. If there's some distinction between the length of a drilled pile as opposed to a helical pile, and the drilled pile could be more, could give you a better foundation.
Saying drilled pile instead of helical pile will just give us more options. There are different types of drilled piles we'll be able to use.
Okay.
Some will go deeper, some will be stronger, some will be shorter. So we can work with the building department, hopefully, to find one that would work.
But it's not a driven pile, so there's no pounding and there's no vibration to the school, or it's less of
that. That's the difference. that is the difference, correct?
Okay.
I guess Josh or Vinny, is that something that we can even make like a clause of approval, or is that outside of our? I don't think it is, right?
You don't think it is what?
That we can't make the call today and say as a term of approval you have to use a drilled pile. Can we? Or I mean, that's not one of their. They're not seeking a.
Usually a construction topic, but in our case here, we're making it well, we're trying to use it as a condition to obviate or to give this project the negative criteria.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
If I understood Lindsay's staff report correctly. Now the correction, I guess, could be how do we intertwine those? How do we make it somewhat of a condition by calling it a drilled pile, but giving the construction code official the ultimate say by reviewing whatever Chuck's going to present to them in terms of an engineering report? I think that's the issue, right? Lindsay, is that right or is that wrong?
I was going to speak to that during staff comment, but if you want me to comment on that now.
Well,
So,
why don't we move into staff comments?
okay, I'm going to end on that though. I'm going to back up a little bit if that's okay.
Yes.
Sorry. All right. So as already iterated, this application does have a longer timeline, hence the Z18 case number. This was submitted back in December of 2018 and was originally proposed as a 5-story building with parking. And frankly, the 5 stories was the non-starter with staff, and there were initially concerns about having a curb cut next to PS5. But I'll go into that when discussing the variance, just providing some background. I did prepare a staff report dated June 15th, 2020, which provides background information, some guidance information for the positive and negative criteria, and I'll make referencing the staff comment portion of the report since you're all familiar with the site plan at this point. 2 variances are being requested, one D variance for density and one C variance for minimum parking requirements. Starting with the density variance, 20 units are proposed where 17 are permitted. So the main thing we consider with density variances is site suitability. We ask, are units being squeezed into the building? Are bulk standards met, etc. So with this project, unit sizes are adequate. The height is conforming, front, side, and rear and side yards are conforming. Therefore, the site can accommodate the 3 additional units, thus justifying the D variance. So the parking variance is considered a C variance. This is required because a minimum of 0.5 spaces per unit is required, which would be 10 spaces for this project. So they're seeking. So the applicant's statement of principal points in their testimony cites proximity to mass transit, the light rail, and the path as justification for the variance. In addition, they cite the project being directly located next to public school number 5. The idea is that an additional curb cut and increased traffic flow could pose a pedestrian safety hazard for students walking to and from school. So to justify a C variance, the uniqueness of the site is considered, meaning the applicant must be facing an exceptional circumstance prohibiting them from meeting the requirement. Since proximity to transit can be applied to pretty much any property in the R5, or you could say anywhere downtown, I don't think the proximity to mass transit is really relevant here when determining if the site is unique. However, its proximity to a school and the concern of adding a curb cut and increasing vehicular traffic becomes relevant when considering the variance. The site is located on a one-way street, 60 feet wide, and the one-way, if they were to have parking, it would go toward the school. And there is street parking on both sides of the street, which serves as a drop-off location for students of PS5. So overall, the project's proximity to PS5 and concerns for pedestrian safety should be considered when seeking to justify the variance. So moving on to the conditions in my report, they're all pretty standard except for one, that drilled piles, as I reference them as helical or screw piles, but since this is the terminology, we'll just call them drilled piles as opposed to drive piles, that must be used during construction. So our thought process behind making it a condition is if they say, okay, we'll try without this condition, then there's nothing in place to enforce it. If they discover that they cannot use these piles, then they can come back to the board and seek relief from the condition, and then they can have their structural engineer speak to that. Or the other option was coming up with something right now that does not involve driving piles during school hours. I don't know what that would really look like, but we can discuss that. But you know, as I stated in my report, the preference would be to make this a condition of approval. And then again, if they discover they can't use the drill piles, they can come back before the board and make that case with someone, you know, a structural engineer could speak more to the specifics for this site. And that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions that you have.
That was very thorough.
Thank you, Lindsay. At this time, does anyone from the board have any specific questions for staff, for the applicants, experts?
Chairman Jacobs?
Yes, Commissioner.
I'd just like to know, because we're talking about, I guess the time frame, because if they're going to be doing drilling and, you know, with the pandemic still going on and the schools might not even be open, what would the time frame be for the possibility of the drilling be done before the schools even get back into session?
Not to speak for the applicant, but in the timeline, realistically, they would have to pull permits within 2 years, or they would have to request an extension and come before the board. But I don't know if Mr. Harrington had anything more specific compared to that timeline.
Sorry. Yeah, Mr. Harrington?
Yeah, I muted myself. In conversations I had with my client, his expectation would be that the pilings would take about 2 to 3 weeks to install. So we don't, you know, obviously nobody knows what's happening in you know, September, even if he goes into, you know, permitting right now. But here, if I could offer something, I got an opportunity to speak with my client to maybe put something as a condition that hopefully works for everybody, is that number one, we would look into the alternatives to use the drive pile, if that, or drilled piling, I think is the term we're using now, the drilled piling. In the event that that cannot work and we cannot find, you know, it's a subset, helical pile is not the only answer. Apparently there's other drilled pilings out there. So that is what we will look into to use as pilings here. In the event we find out that we can't use it for any particular reason, or that it costs, you know, a king's ransom to do it and makes the project infeasible, my thought is we'd have two options. Number one, consult with planning department and the community to try to have some kind of resolution that works for both. You know, we could work with the VNA and Eric and Peter in planning to see if there's a solution. And if the worst case scenario, if we determine that we just can't do it and we need to do the driven piles, we would have to come back to the board and seek your approval.
Fair enough.
Fair.
That's a mouthful, but I think I could put that into a resolution to make sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could put that into writing, Chuck, that would be great. That sounds acceptable to Lindsay. Is that, since it's your report, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, I think it just kind of adds another step. Ultimately, they would have to come back before the board if they're going to use drive piles, if I'm understanding correctly. So that really satisfies the intent of that condition.
Well, would it do in step two, if in the event you had to use drive piles, but you could come to some kind of solution with planning and the VNA, then I wouldn't have to come back to the board. But the community would be involved in that.
Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. To you, Lindsay?
If I'm understanding it correctly, that if they use drive piles, they have to come back before the board, then yes.
We would come back to the board unless you and the community signed off on some kind of mechanism to do drive piles.
Okay. Tanya, do you have any thoughts on that? Does that sound realistic? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I haven't had a case that, you know, had something that a planning and a community group would sign off on as part of the condition.
Well, yeah.
We actually have done this in the past, yeah.
Okay. Just
sounds like that would work. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, like come before the board if you and the community group agree.
Right, that's my thought.
That's the point. Is
That
it
makes
not?
sense.
So put that wording in, Mr. Harrington. Okay.
It's an early night.
What, Ahmed?
I said, good thing that we come to this conclusion so we can have an early night.
Yes. Well,
Does
somebody
any,
has to make a
any
motion if
other
we're finished.
questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion on approval with the staff conditions on Z18-129.
Second.
Right. Commissioner Brown,
Just for staff commission conditions as amended.
As amended by you, Mr., as amended by our thoughts here. Yes.
Yes.
okay, on a motion to approve with the revised staff conditions, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Netchert,
Yes.
Commissioner Velardo,
Yes.
Commissioner Rothman,
Yes,
Commissioner McCormick,
Yes.
Commissioner Shadid,
Yes.
and Chairman Jacobs.
Yes.
All right, motion carries, all in favor with conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Got an hour and a half.
good
Well, we
job.
have one motion, one resolution to memorialize,
Thank
and
you,
then we're
everyone.
done. Is that right?
Switch over our presenters. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good luck.
Okay, so, Bridget, where are you? Oh, there you are. The first and the only resolution to memorialize was Myneni, that's Myneni and Sons LLC. That was case Z 20-030, final major site plan administrative amendment approval for 680 Grand Street. That was heard on June 11th. And present then were Chairperson Jacobs, Commissioners Donnelly, McCormick, Shadid, Rothman, Mitchell, and Velardo. That passed 7 in favor, none opposed. So all in favor of memorializing that?
Aye.
That ends it from this end.
Make a motion to close.
Second.
Yay.
All in favor? Yes.
Unanimous.
Well, good night.
No.
Bye.
All right, Matt, stay on the call.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
8:00.
Right?
Everybody be safe. By the way, Chad, he did very well in timekeeping.
Yeah.
Yes, they came in under time.
You have a new job.
Came in a minute under time. Very good.
Yeah, the
Get
next,
his head too swole. Next time it'll be 1 minute and 12 seconds to talk. 2 and 2.
the next meeting is July 9th. It's a special meeting, just one case. That's Cameron's. I believe it's, has some push. I don't really know why it's its own meeting. Tanya, I guess there's going to be a lot of comments. So
Yes, we expect a lot of public
Right.
to come.
Yeah. You're up again.
What location is that one? What address is that one?
is that on Ocean?
Ocean. It's right behind the annex. We should stop recording.
Off the record.
All
Yep.
right.
Yep.